Beneath the silver moons of Andromeda, we built our last home. The ship drifted silently through the darkness of space, its silver body catching the pale light of Andromeda's twin moons. It had been months, maybe years, since the crew had left Earth. No one counted the days anymore. Time had become meaningless between the stars. What mattered now was survival and hope. Captain Elara stood at the wide observation window, staring at the vast, shimmering nebulae that painted the blackness with swirls of violet and gold. Her reflection in the glass looked older, her eyes tired but steady. Behind her, the faint hum of the ship's life support systems was the only reminder that something still lived inside this cold machine. "Report, Kian," she said softly without turning. The young engineer looked up from his console. "We're entering the Andromeda sector, Captain. Scanners show several habitable moons orbiting the twin stars." Elara nodded. "Prepare the landing modules. We'll rest soon." The crew exchanged glances. Rest was something none of them had dared hope for in months. The endless journey across empty galaxies had worn down even the strongest among them. They had left behind a dying Earth, consumed by wars and storms. Andromeda was their last chance, a dream that kept them alive when everything else had turned to dust. Hours later, the ship descended through the thick lavender clouds of one of Andromeda's moons. The surface below shimmered under the twin lights of two silver moons hanging high above the horizon. Crystalline rivers ran through fields of blue grass, and strange glowing trees swayed as if breathing. Kian's eyes widened. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Elara smiled faintly. "Beauty doesn't always mean safety," she reminded him, but even she couldn't hide the wonder in her tone. They landed near a shallow valley, surrounded by silver cliffs. The ground was soft beneath their boots, glowing faintly when they stepped. The air was thin but breathable. For the first time in years, they removed their helmets and felt the wind, gentle and cool, carrying scents of minerals and something sweet, like rain on new soil. Dr. Elara, the biologist, bent down to examine the glowing plants. "The ecosystem is stable," she murmured. "Oxygen levels are consistent. It's almost welcoming." "Let's not forget," said Tarek, the security officer, scanning the perimeter. "So was Mars, before it killed half the settlement." Elara turned to him. "We'll be careful. But if this world can sustain life, we might just have found our last home." Her words hung in the air like a promise and a warning. That night, under the twin silver moons, the crew gathered around a portable campfire. The flames reflected off their helmets, their faces softened by the strange blue light of the alien landscape. Kian stared at the sky, where the stars of Andromeda shone brighter than he had ever seen. "Do you think anyone else made it this far?" he asked quietly. Elara shook her head. "No signal for months. We may be the last." Elara looked up, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Then we make it count. If humanity dies here, at least we'll die building something new." There was silence after that, solemn, yet peaceful. They were survivors, dreamers, wanderers of a forgotten world. And now, under two moons that shimmered like tears, they began to believe that this place could truly be home. The next morning, they started construction near the valley. The ship's modular systems were designed to form habitats quickly, metal shells that unfolded like petals into small domes. Within hours, the first shelter stood, gleaming under the light. Kian worked tirelessly, his hands coated in silver dust. He was young, but he carried the weight of the mission as if born for it. "We'll need energy generators here," he said. "The solar panels can draw light from both moons. Double efficiency." Elara smiled at him. "You sound like you're already planning a city." "Maybe I am," he replied, eyes bright. "A city under silver moons." Elara watched them from a distance. Their laughter was faint but real, something she hadn't heard in so long. Hope was a fragile thing, but here it was growing. By the fifth day, they had built 3 shelters, a communication tower, and a small greenhouse. The plants from Earth, wheat, beans, and tomatoes, were slowly adapting to the new soil. Elara spent most of her hours monitoring growth patterns and studying native species. She had found something strange near the river, a cluster of crystals that pulsed faintly when touched. "These might be alive," she told Elara one evening. "They respond to energy, light, sound, even our presence." Elara frowned. "Living crystals?" "Not exactly alive," Lyra said, "but something between life and energy. Maybe this planet doesn't separate the two like we do." Elara gazed at the crystals glowing softly in Lyra's hands. "Whatever they are, handle them carefully. We're guests here." That night, the wind changed. The soft breezes turned sharp, carrying strange whispers that rippled across the valley. The fire flickered blue, and the ground trembled faintly beneath their feet. Tarek stood alert. "Captain, we're picking up movement near the ridge." Kian checked his scanner. "No life forms detected." "Then what's moving?" Tarek asked. Before Elara could answer, the silver cliffs shimmered, like liquid metal shifting form. The glowing crystals near the camp began to hum softly, their light pulsing in rhythm with the tremor. Lyra stepped closer, eyes wide. "It's reacting to us." Then, as suddenly as it began, the ground stilled. The hum faded. Silence fell again, broken only by the distant cry of some unseen creature. Elara exhaled slowly. "We keep watch tonight. No one sleeps alone." Later, as the others rested, Kian sat by the dying fire, staring at the moons reflected in the river. Elara joined him quietly. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head. "I keep thinking maybe this planet is alive. Not just the plants, but everything, the air, the ground, even the light." Elara looked at the shimmering landscape. "Maybe it is. And maybe it's watching us." He smiled faintly. "Do you think it wants us here?" Elara didn't answer. She only looked up at the silver moons, their light falling softly across their faces. "If it does," she said finally, "then let's not disappoint it." That night marked the beginning of something none of them could understand yet. Beneath the silver moons of Andromeda, the Earthborn survivors had planted their first seed of hope. But in the depths of the planet, something ancient stirred, something that had been waiting for visitors for a very long time. The valley slept, the stars whispered, and the moons watched in silence. And in that silence, the last home of humankind began to breathe. Morning came with a strange calmness. The silver moons still hung in the fading sky, casting long shadows over the valley. The crew moved quietly, each lost in their thoughts after the unsettling events of the night. Elara stood outside her tent, watching the horizon turn from blue to pale gold. The wind was gentle again, carrying the scent of the alien flowers that bloomed near the river. For a moment it almost felt like peace. But deep down, she knew something had changed. Kian approached holding a small scanner. "Captain, I've been studying the energy readings from last night." The ground emitted a pulse, strong enough to register on every system. It wasn't random. "Meaning?" Elara asked. "Meaning it was patterned, like a signal." Lyra joined them, her expression thoughtful. "I believe the crystals are part of it. They pulse in waves that match the ground vibrations. It's as if the whole valley is communicating, maybe even thinking." Elara frowned. "You think the planet is alive?" Lyra hesitated. "Not in the way we understand life. But yes, maybe. Everything here, plants, minerals, light, it's all connected. This world might not be just a home. It might be a single living system." Tarek crossed his arms. "Then it knows we're here." "Yes," Lyra said softly. "It knows." By afternoon, the team had gathered samples from the cliffs and riverbed. They discovered that the crystals weren't just scattered. They grew in patterns, spiraling outward like roots or veins. When exposed to human touch, they vibrated gently, almost like they were listening. Kian recorded the readings, his face glowing with excitement. "Look at this, Captain. The resonance frequency matches our own heartbeats. It's like the planet is trying to sync with us." "That's impossible," Tarek muttered. Lyra smiled faintly. "Nothing's impossible in Andromeda." Elara crouched beside the crystals, her gloved hand brushing their surface. They pulsed faintly, and for a split second, she felt something, an echo inside her mind. A whisper, too faint to understand, yet warm and familiar. She pulled her hand back quickly. "Captain?" Lyra asked. "Nothing," Elara said quickly. "Let's continue the scans." But as she turned away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had spoken to her, not in words, but in emotion. A presence, deep and patient, had touched her thoughts like a gentle current. That night, as the crew gathered for dinner, the mood was lighter. The danger felt distant under the twin moons, and the sense of wonder returned. Kian set up a small music player near the campfire, an old Earth recording of piano melodies. The soft notes floated through the air, blending with the hum of the alien wind. "It almost feels like home," Lyra said quietly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Elara smiled. "Maybe that's what this place wants, to be our home." Tarek poured a drink and leaned back. "Let's just hope it doesn't want to eat us instead." They laughed, tired laughter, but real. For a moment, they were no longer explorers or survivors. They were simply people, sitting together under an alien sky. But then the fire flickered, and the air grew colder. The ground beneath them shivered once more, gently, like a breath. Lyra froze. "Did you feel that?" The crystals near the camp began to glow softly, pulsing in rhythm with the music. The piano melody changed, warping slightly, as if something was echoing the tune from beneath the ground. Kian stared at his scanner. "The frequency, it's mimicking our sound waves." Elara's heart pounded. "Turn it off." Kian did, and instantly the light faded. Silence returned. The valley waited. The next day, Elara called a meeting in the central dome. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," she said firmly. "If this planet can react to us, our sound, movement, even our presence, we must be cautious." Lyra nodded. "But it doesn't seem hostile. The energy pulses have stabilized. It might be trying to communicate." Tark shook his head. "Communicate or control? We don't know the difference yet." Kian looked between them. "We can't ignore it. If this world is alive, maybe it can help us survive here. Maybe we can live with it, build something together." Elara studied him quietly. His eyes were full of hope, the kind she'd seen die in too many people before. "All right," she said finally. "But we proceed carefully. We'll send out signal tests. Controlled frequencies only." Kian smiled. "I'll start at sunrise." The next morning, Kian set up a small transmitter by the river. He sent out soft waves of sound at different frequencies, recording how the crystals reacted. At first, there was nothing. Then, slowly, a rhythm began, a series of faint pulses rising from the ground. He adjusted the signal, matching its frequency. The pulses grew stronger, steadier. Lyra watched in awe. "It's responding." Kian's fingers trembled slightly. It's learning our pattern." Then the air shimmered. The surface of the river rippled as if something unseen had stirred beneath it. A faint shape of light began to form, a glowing outline, shifting like mist. "Captain,"
Kian called.
Elara and Tark ran to them. The figure hovered above the river, a tall, luminous being with no clear form, only light and motion. It pulsed in the same rhythm as the crystals. No one spoke. The being seemed to tilt its head, or whatever part of it resembled one, toward them. Then, a voice echoed softly in their minds. "You are far from home." Elara's breath caught. "You can speak. Not with words. With thought. With memory." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide. "Who are you?" "We are what you call the ground."
"The air."
"The river." "We are this world." Tark tightened his grip on his weapon. "You're saying the planet is alive?" "Alive and waiting. Long before you came." Elara tried to steady her voice. "Waiting for what?" The being's light dimmed slightly. "For someone to listen." The crew stood in silence, the weight of those words sinking deep. The light faded, dissolving back into the air until only the ripples on the river remained. Kian exhaled. "We made contact." Lyra's voice trembled. "We spoke to a planet." Elara looked up at the silver moons, her mind racing. "Not just a planet," she whispered. "A mind older than any of us can imagine." And for the first time, she realized the truth. They hadn't simply found a new home. They had stepped into the heart of a living world. That night, as they gathered in silence, the crystals began to hum softly again, not in warning this time, but in harmony. The melody was familiar, the same tune Kian had played by the fire. The planet was singing back. Under the silver moons of Andromeda, humanity had been heard. And something vast had begun to answer. The following days passed in a strange, dreamlike rhythm. The valley was calm, the winds gentle, and the crystals glowed softly every night, as if the planet itself was breathing with them. The fear that once lingered in the crew's hearts began to fade, replaced by curiosity and wonder. Kian spent his hours by the river, adjusting the transmitters and refining the resonance frequencies. Each time he played the tones, the crystals responded more clearly, almost musically. The pulses now formed patterns that resembled songs, soft and haunting. Elara recorded everything. "It's communication," she said excitedly. "A language made of energy and rhythm. We're starting to understand each other." Elara watched from a distance. "Or it's starting to understand us," she murmured. But her caution couldn't hide the awe she felt. The world beneath their feet was no longer just alien terrain. It was a consciousness, vast and ancient. And it was listening. That evening, the crew gathered once more by the campfire. The silver moons shone overhead, their light turning the valley into a shimmering sea of white and blue. Elara spoke first. "I've been analyzing the energy readings from the entity we contacted. It isn't localized. The being we saw by the river wasn't an individual. It was a fragment of something much larger. The whole moon might be part of a single network, like a mind spread through every particle." Kian added, "It's like we're standing on the surface of a sleeping giant. Only now it's waking up." Tarek looked uneasy. "And what happens when it wakes up completely?" Elara stared into the flames. "That's what we need to find out, before we decide to stay." The next morning, Elara and Kian ventured deeper into the valley to study a formation of giant crystal towers that rose like spires from the earth. The air was thick with energy, and every step seemed to echo. "This place feels alive," Elara whispered. Kian touched the nearest spire. It hummed under his palm, glowing brighter. A faint vibration moved up his arm, and for a moment he saw flashes, images not his own. A vast ocean of light, cities made of glass, skies filled with twin moons shining on beings of pure energy. He gasped and stepped back, breath trembling. "What happened?" Elara asked. "I saw something," Kian said. "Memories. Not mine. The planet's." She stared at him. "You're saying it remembers?" "Yes," he whispered. "And it's trying to show us." They returned to camp shaken but excited. Elara listened carefully as Kian described what he had seen. "Cities of light," he said. "Beings made of energy. It was like a civilization, but not human. Maybe the ones who came before." Elara nodded. "It makes sense. A world with this kind of consciousness couldn't have evolved alone. Something, or someone, must have created it, or lived within it." Tarek frowned. "And what happened to them?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. The moons poured their silver light into her cabin, and the soft hum of the crystals filled the valley. She walked outside, drawn to the sound. By the river, the air shimmered again. The same glowing figure appeared, taller this time, its form clearer, its light steady. Elara approached slowly. "You came back," she said softly. "You called." The voice echoed inside her mind. She hesitated. "The visions, the cities of light. Were they yours?" "They were ours. We were many once. We built this world to live forever. But time forgets all things." Elara's chest tightened. "What happened to you?" The light dimmed, and a faint sadness filled her mind. "We reached too far. We became part of the world we built. Our bodies faded. Our minds became the soil, the rivers, the wind. We are what remains." Elara swallowed hard. "You're the last of your kind, as you are now." The words pierced her like a blade of truth. Humanity, too, had fled its dying world, seeking survival among the stars. They were not so different. Elara took a slow breath. We came here to live, to build again. The being's light flickered gently. Then live. But remember, every world remembers what it is given. Build with care. The light faded once more, leaving Elara alone beneath the moons, her heart heavy with awe and sorrow. The next day, she gathered the crew and told them what she had learned. Kian's eyes were wide. They became one with the planet. Lyra whispered. Their consciousness merged into the very fabric of the world. They never truly died, they transformed. Tark shook his head. That's not living. That's losing yourself. Maybe, Elara said quietly. But maybe that's what survival means when time no longer has meaning. Kian looked out toward the glowing cliffs. If we build our home here, maybe we'll be remembered too. Maybe we'll become part of something bigger. Lyra smiled faintly. Beneath these moons, we might not just survive. We might belong. Elara nodded slowly. Then we build. But not just structures. We build trust. With the planet, with each other, with the past that sleeps beneath us. Over the next weeks, they worked tirelessly. The domes became connected by glowing pathways that pulsed with light drawn from the crystals. The air systems and power grids synchronized perfectly with the planet's energy flow, as if the world itself was helping them. Crops began to grow faster. The nights grew warmer. The ground itself hummed softly beneath their feet, a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, humanity was not fighting against nature. They were building with it. But peace never lasts forever. One night, as the moons hung low, Kian was awakened by a tremor that shook the domes. He rushed outside and saw the river glowing fiercely, its waters rippling with white fire. Elara, he shouted. Something's happening. The crew gathered, staring as the entire valley began to pulse. The crystals blazed brighter and brighter until the light was blinding. And then they heard it, a deep, sorrowful sound rising from the ground itself. Not a voice but a cry. Lyra fell to her knees. It's in pain. Elara clenched her fists. What's causing it? The signal, Kian said suddenly. The transmitters. We've been sending frequencies non-stop. Maybe we heard it without realizing. Tarek cursed under his breath. We were supposed to learn, not destroy. Elara ran toward the transmitters, shouting, Shut them down. All of them. Kian rushed beside her, disabling the system. The light around them flickered, dimmed, and finally faded. The ground fell still. The valley went silent once more. The only sound was their heavy breathing and the whisper of the alien wind. Elara sank to her knees, looking at the silver moons reflected in the river. We came here to build a home, she said softly, not to repeat the same mistakes we made on Earth. Kian looked at her, guilt heavy in his voice. We didn't mean to hurt it. I know, she said gently, but meaning isn't enough. We have to listen, to understand what this world wants to be. The wind carried a faint hum again, soft, forgiving, almost like a lullaby. Lyra smiled through her tears. It forgave us. Elara gazed at the glowing horizon. Maybe it remembers mercy. That night, the crew stood together beneath the silver moons. The valley was quiet again, alive but calm. The crystals pulsed softly, and somewhere deep below, the planet's heart beat in time with their own. They had made a mistake, but they had also learned something precious. This world was not a tool to be used. It was a being to be respected, a soul to be shared. And as the moon shone down upon them, they began once more to build, not out of desperation this time, but out of harmony. They were not conquerors anymore. They were children of a new world. The days that followed were filled with quiet rebuilding. The valley seemed calm again, its shimmering rivers reflecting the pale light of the twin moons. The crystals glowed softly at night, no longer an alarm, but in a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat shared between the world and its new inhabitants. The crew worked with renewed purpose. This time, they did not force the planet to adapt to them. They adapted to it. The air recyclers were reprogrammed to match the natural oxygen flow of the valley. The energy grids were built using the crystalline structures that the planet willingly provided, each one humming in balance with the others. The settlement began to glow faintly in the night, a cluster of silver domes nestled in harmony with the alien landscape. Elara watched from the hilltop as the wind moved through the glowing grass. She could feel the peace of the place deep inside her, like the world was breathing with her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a survivor. She felt like she was home. One evening, Kian approached her as she stood by the river. "The readings have stabilized," he said. "No more tremors, no more energy surges. Whatever happened before, it's healed." Elara nodded slowly. "Because we listened." He smiled faintly. "It's strange, isn't it? Back on Earth, we always tried to control everything. But here, when we stopped trying, things began to work." She looked at him. "Maybe that's what this world has been trying to teach us all along." The water rippled gently beside them. The faint hum of the crystals returned, softer than before, almost like a whisper. Lyra's voice called from behind. "Captain, you should see this." In the central dome, Lyra had been studying the crystalline structures that had grown near their new habitat. Some of them had changed shape overnight, forming delicate spires that reflected light in intricate patterns. "Look," Lyra said, excitement shining in her eyes. "These aren't random formations. They're deliberate." Kian leaned closer. "They look like symbols." "Yes," Lyra said. "Patterns. Repeating sequences. I think the planet is trying to write to us." Elara stared at the glowing symbols etched into the crystal surface. "Can we decode them?" "I'm working on it," Lyra said. "But they're not a written language in the usual sense. They're mathematical, emotional, like a memory carved in light." Elara touched the nearest spire gently. It pulsed beneath her hand, and suddenly her vision blurred. The world around her shifted. She was standing on a vast plain of light. Towering cities rose around her, structures of crystal and energy, alive and moving. Beings of radiance floated through the air, their forms fluid and shimmering. They spoke in tones that resonated through her chest, music that shaped reality itself. A voice echoed in her mind. "We built this world with love. Each stone, each wind, each light was part of us." She saw them join their consciousness with the planet, merging into its body like rivers flowing into an ocean. It was not death, it was transformation. A choice to live forever as part of something greater. But then came darkness. The skies turned red. The twin moons dimmed. The cities shattered as great storms of energy tore through the surface. The beings screamed, not in pain, but in sorrow, as their light scattered into the soil and air. The voice whispered, faint and mournful, "We forgot balance. We reached beyond what our world could hold." Then the vision faded, and Elara gasped, falling to her knees. "Captain." Kian ran to her side. "I saw it," she whispered. "Their world before it died. They became this planet because they loved it too much to let it go. But they destroyed it first." The crew was silent. The hum of the crystals filled the air again, soft and sorrowful. Tark spoke at last. "So, that's what it's been trying to show us, a warning." Lyra nodded. "It doesn't want us to repeat its mistakes." Elara looked at the others, her voice steady, but filled with emotion. "Then we must build differently. Not with machines that take, but with hearts that give. We won't make the same mistake twice." The others nodded. They understood. In the weeks that followed, their work changed completely. Every system they built was designed to live with the world, not against it. The energy network drew power directly from the planet's natural rhythm, never exceeding what it could replenish. The buildings adjusted themselves according to the wind and light, guided by the planet's subtle signals. Even the crops grew in harmony with native plants, sharing nutrients in the glowing soil. And slowly, the settlement began to transform. At night, from the hilltops, their home shone like a part of the valley itself, domes glowing like seeds in silver soil, rivers winding between them like living veins. The world had accepted them. And in return, it began to reveal more. One evening, Lyra discovered something extraordinary. "Captain, look at this," she said, pointing to the sensors. "The planet's energy fields have synchronized with our heart rates, our breathing patterns, even our dreams. It's not just responding to us anymore. It's bonding with us." Kian blinked. "You mean it's connecting?" "Yes," Lyra said, "as if it sees us as part of itself now." Elara felt a chill, not of fear, but of awe. "We're becoming a part of this world, just as the ones before us did." Tarek looked uneasy. "Are we sure that's a good thing?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Maybe it's what we were meant to do. Maybe this is the next step of life, connection instead of separation." Elara placed her hand on the glowing surface of the central dome. It pulsed once, gently, like a heartbeat. "I think," she said softly, "that this is how new worlds are born." That night, the twin moons rose higher than ever before, their light silvering the entire valley. The air shimmered, and a soft melody filled the camp, not from any speaker, but from the ground itself. The crystals sang. The river glowed. The wind carried the harmony through the domes. And in that music, they heard words, not spoken but felt. "You have learned. You have listened. You are home." Elara stood beneath the moons, her heart trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Kian, standing beside her, smiled through tears. "It accepted us." "No," Elara said softly, watching the stars reflect in the river. "It welcomed us." As dawn broke over the horizon, a new world began to awaken. The sky was filled with light that shimmered through layers of mist, and the air carried the gentle hum of harmony between humanity and the living planet. They had done it. They had built their last home, not with walls and metal, but with understanding and peace. And beneath the silver moons of Andromeda, humanity had finally learned the truth the stars had whispered for ages. To survive is to belong. To live is to listen. To build is to love. The valley glowed beneath the twin silver moons. Months had passed since the crew of the Horizon landed, and their colony, now called Haven, had grown into a living part of the planet. The domes shimmered like pearls beneath the night sky, their lights merging softly with the rhythm of the world itself. The air was calm. The rivers sang. The crystals pulsed in harmony with the settlers' hearts. Humanity had at last found peace. But peace is never permanent, not even beneath the most beautiful moons. Elara stood on the ridge overlooking Haven. The wind brushed her hair as she looked up at the stars. For the first time since leaving Earth, she felt no longing to return. This world had become their sanctuary, their second beginning. Kian joined her, holding a scanner. "Energy levels are perfect. The valley's stable. Even the crops have adapted to the soil's glow. It's incredible." Elara smiled faintly. "We did it, Kian. Humanity has a home again." He looked up at the two moons, their light silvering his face. "Maybe this time, we'll deserve it." She turned to him. "We already do." But then, something flickered across the horizon. A bright light, sharp and artificial, cutting through the calm sky. Kian frowned. "That's not from the planet." Elara's heart tightened. "Signal it." He adjusted the controls on his wrist. "Receiving transmission, it's a ship." The message came through, static-filled and broken, but unmistakably human. "This is the Ark vessel Solace. Requesting landing clearance. We've found you." Hours later, the new ship descended through the lavender clouds, flames of re-entry streaking the sky. The colonists gathered in silence, their hearts heavy with both hope and dread. Lyra whispered, "More survivors." Tarek, ever cautious, muttered, "Or more conquerors." Elara said nothing. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ship as it landed near the cliffs. The dust settled, and the air shimmered in the moonlight. A group of figures emerged, tired, thin, and hollow-eyed. They wore the old Earth insignia on their chests. Their leader, Commander Reese, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Elara Solon," he said, voice raspy from the long journey. "You're a hard woman to find." She nodded slowly. "We thought we were the last."
So did we, he said.
His gaze swept over the glowing valley. But it seems you've done more than survive. Later that night, they sat together inside the main dome. The newcomers were amazed by what they saw: structures that breathed, crops that grew without soil, energy flowing without engines. "This isn't technology," Commander Reese said in disbelief. "It's something else." Lyra explained gently. "It's the planet. It helps us. We live in balance with it." Reese frowned. "You mean you're relying on it? Trusting something alien to keep you alive?" Elara's eyes hardened. "It isn't something alien. It's our world now." He leaned forward. "Captain, I have orders. Earth Command, what's left of it, wants a report on every habitable system. This moon could save millions still trapped back home." Kian's voice rose sharply. "If you bring more ships here, you'll destroy it, like we destroyed Earth." Reese stared at him coldly. "Survival requires sacrifice. You think a few glowing rocks will stop humanity's hunger?" The ground trembled faintly, as if reacting to his words. The crystals around the dome dimmed, their light flickering. Elara felt it immediately, the planet's unease. "Stop," she said quietly. "You're upsetting it." Reese gave a short laugh. "You talk like it's alive." "It is," she said simply. "And it's listening." Outside, the wind began to rise. The soft hum that once soothed them turned into a low, resonant vibration that shook the domes. The air shimmered with silver light. Lyra ran to the monitors. "Energy surge. Massive one. It's coming from the ground." The crystals blazed to life, their glow bright as fire. The entire valley pulsed. Elara shouted over the roar. "Everyone outside now." They ran into the open, the newcomers frozen in awe and fear. The ground rippled like water. The silver cliff shone, and from the center of the valley, the luminous figure appeared once again, taller, brighter, vast beyond comprehension. "You bring more voices," it said in their minds, its tone neither anger nor welcome, just deep, weary awareness. Elara stepped forward. "They're survivors. Like us. Please don't harm them." "Harm?" The light flickered. "We do not harm. But they bring the old hunger. The one that burned worlds." Reese stared, trembling. "What are you?" "We are what remains of those who once thought as you do." Elara turned to Reese. "Do you understand now? This world remembers. It knows what destruction looks like." The light dimmed slightly. "We can share if you learn to give. But take again, and you will lose everything." The newcomers fell silent. The planet's voice faded, leaving only the whisper of wind. Days passed. Tension filled the air like a storm waiting to break. The Solace crew wanted resources, metals, and power. Haven's settlers wanted peace. One night, Kian found Reese loading equipment near the ship. "You're leaving?" he asked. Reese shook his head.
"No."
"I'm securing samples. Earth needs them." Kian stepped closer. "You can't. The planet's alive. It feels everything we do." Reese snapped. "You sound like her. Like you've fallen in love with a rock." "It's more alive than Earth ever was," Kian said quietly. "And it chose to trust us."
"Don't break that."
But Reese ignored him. He activated a containment field and tore a shard of crystal from the valley floor. The ground screamed. A shockwave threw Kian backward. The air turned white with light. The moons themselves seemed to dim. The earth opened, and the rivers of silver began to boil. Elara raced from the dome, shouting, "Shut it down."
"Now."
But it was too late. The planet cried out in pain, a sound that tore through their minds, a pulse that shook the sky. The newcomers fell to their knees, clutching their heads. The domes flickered, trembling. Elara ran to the glowing fissure where the crystal had been. "Please," she whispered to the ground. "We're sorry. We didn't mean this." The air shimmered again. The great light returned, broken, flickering like a dying star. "You came to live. Do not come to destroy." Elara pressed her hand to the ground. "Then take it back. Take what was taken." The light dimmed. The crystal shard in Reese's hand dissolved into dust. The ground healed beneath their feet. Then all was silent. Rhys fell to his knees, gasping. It forgave us. Elara looked at him, eyes hard.
No.
It gave us one last chance. The following dawn was quiet. The winds were soft again, and the valley glowed once more in peace. Rhys and his crew dismantled their mining gear and swore to protect the world they had nearly harmed. Lyra said gently, "Maybe it didn't just forgive us. Maybe it understands what it means to be human, to make mistakes and to learn." Elara smiled faintly. "That's what makes us alive." They stood together as the suns rose beyond the cliffs, bathing Haven in light. The silver moons hung above, serene and eternal. The planet hummed softly beneath their feet, not in warning this time, but in acceptance. Months later, the two groups had merged into one colony. They built not cities, but gardens, living homes that breathed and grew with the soil. The planet shared its warmth, its song, its memory. And sometimes, when the nights were quiet, the settlers would hear voices in the wind, gentle and ancient, whispering through the glowing trees. "You have learned. You are part of us now." Elara often sat by the river, watching the moons reflect in the water. She no longer looked to the stars for home. Home was here, beneath her hands, beneath her feet, beneath the silver moons of Andromeda. Kian joined her one night, his voice soft. "Do you think Earth will ever know what we found?" She smiled. "Maybe. But even if they don't, it's all right. The stars remember." He looked up at the endless sky. "Do you think we'll ever leave?" Elara shook her head.
No.
"Because we've already arrived." And so humanity stayed, not as conquerors, not as wanderers, but as part of something larger. The world that once feared them now sang with them. Together, they built not a fortress, but a home. And when the light of dawn touched the valley, the silver moons shone brighter than ever before, reflecting the bond between two forms of life, one born of Earth, one born of stars. Under the silver moons of Andromeda, humanity found peace. And for the first time in eternity, the universe smiled back.